welcome. Take a moment. If you're listening to this right now, there's a good chance something didn't go the way it should have today. A comment you didn't expect. A decision made without you. A line crossed. And for a brief second, before you even noticed it, your body moved first. The jaw tightened. The chest rose. Words lined up ready to be released. That moment right there wasn't loud. No one saw it. But it mattered more than what came after. Because most of our damage doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from what we do in the split second we believe we had no choice. Americans are raised to act, to respond, to push back, to prove something. But there's an older idea, quiet, unimpressive, almost invisible. It says freedom doesn't arrive when life behaves. It arrives when you realize you don't have to move just because something touched you. Tonight, we're going to talk about that space, the moment you didn't choose, and how learning to see it changes everything that follows. That space we talked about, the quiet gap most people never notice, usually disappears fast because life doesn't wait. It presses first. It happens in ordinary places. A parking lot with flickering lights. A break room that smells like burnt coffee. A phone buzzing when you already know the answer won't be good. Someone cuts you off on the freeway. Your supervisor talks over you in a meeting. A message shows up late at night, short and cold. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic, but inside something tightens. You feel it before you think it. The shoulders lift. The breath gets shallow. The mind starts telling a story. They don't respect me. I can't let this slide. If I don't respond now, I lose something. And that's the part no one warns you about. Life doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't wait until you're rested, calm, or ready. It touches you first. Then it watches what you do. Most of us were trained early to move fast, to answer back, to fix it, to prove we're not weak. So we react, not because we chose to, but because it feels automatic. Later, when the noise settles, there's that familiar aftertaste, a sentence you wish you hadn't sent, a tone you didn't mean to use, a night spent replaying a moment that's already gone. And here's the hard part to admit. The situation didn't take your peace. Your reaction did. This isn't about blame. It's about accuracy. There's an old Stoic idea that shows up quietly here. It says the first movement inside you, the surge, the heat, the impulse is not a failure. It's human. What matters is what comes next. Between what happens and what you do, there is a narrow window. Most people miss it because they were never taught to look for it. That window is where character lives, not in big speeches, not in perfect control, but in the ability to notice. This is happening inside me without letting it drive the car. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress anger or pretend things don't hurt. That's not strength. That's denial. It asks for something quieter, to see the moment clearly, to recognize that the pressure you feel is not the same thing as a command. Life can press hard, unfairly, but it cannot force agreement. The trouble starts when we confuse the two, when we treat every impulse as an order, every feeling as a verdict. That's how days get heavier than they need to be. That's how good intentions turn into regret. Not because you're broken, but because no one showed you that the first move is not the only move. And once you see that, once you realize that pressure doesn't remove choice, something begins to shift. Not outside, inside. That's where the real work starts. Inside that shift, a sentence usually appears. Quiet, convincing. I had no choice. It sounds reasonable, almost responsible. You say it to explain the raised voice, the sharp email, the door you closed harder than you meant to. Sometimes you say it out loud, sometimes only to yourself driving home with the radio off. I had no choice. Mark said it after the meeting. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, staring at the ceiling. They put me on the spot. What was I supposed to do? Later that night, his daughter asked why he seemed angry. He said he was just tired. That was easier than explaining a moment he didn't understand himself. This is how it usually goes. The phrase doesn't show up before the reaction. It shows up after, like a receipt we print to justify the purchase. And here's what makes it dangerous. The sentence doesn't describe what happened. It rewrites it. It takes a moment that was uncomfortable, fast, and unclear, and turns it into something final. Unavoidable, closed. Stoicism has a hard truth about this. Not cruel, precise. It says that events do not command us. They present themselves. A comment, a look, a loss. What follows is not automatic, even when it feels that way. The body reacts first. That's not in your control. The surge of heat, the tightening chest, the quickening pulse, those are signals, not orders. The mistake happens when we treat them as instructions. I felt angry, so I spoke. I felt disrespected, so pushed back. I felt cornered, so I struck first. The feeling becomes the authority. Stoicism draws a line most people were never shown between what appears inside you and what you agree with. That agreement is quiet. It doesn't feel like a choice, but it is. You don't choose the thought that says, "This is unfair." but you do choose whether to treat it as law. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the thought arrives fully formed. They're reckless. They don't care. The body tightens. The horn is right there. The belief sneaks in unnoticed. If I don't react, I'm letting it happen. That belief is the real trigger. Not the car, not the driver. The belief that dignity must be defended immediately or it disappears forever. That's the illusion. Nothing important about you is lost in a pause. Nothing essential is protected by impulse. I had no choice feels comforting because it removes responsibility, but it also removes power. If there was no choice, there was no freedom. And without freedom, there is no character to shape. Stoicism doesn't accuse you for reacting. It asks you to notice the story you tell afterward. The moment you say, "I had no choice," you close the door on the only place growth can happen. The truth is quieter, less dramatic, harder to swallow. There was a choice. It was brief, untrained, easy to miss, but it was there. And once you're willing to see that, not to judge yourself, but to understand the mechanics, the sentence begins to lose its grip. You start replacing it with something more honest. I didn't see the choice in time. That single shift changes the terrain, because what can be seen can be trained. That single shift changes the terrain, because what can be seen can be trained. But this is where most people take a wrong turn. They hear the word freedom and imagine relief, lightness, a feeling of ease, a day when nothing presses, no tension in the shoulders, no tightness in the chest. That's not what this is. Freedom in the Stoic sense doesn't arrive as comfort. It arrives as stability. It shows up quietly often in moments that still feel unpleasant. Think about the last time you waited in line at the DMV. The air was stale. The chair was hard. The clock barely moved. You weren't free because it felt good. You were free only if your mood wasn't dragged around by it. That difference matters. Most people spend their lives chasing a feeling. When they feel calm, they believe they're in control. When they feel irritated, they assume something has gone wrong, so they try to fix the feeling. They vent, they distract, they push harder. But Stoicism never promised emotional comfort. It promised something stronger. That no matter what shows up, you are not required to surrender your direction. Freedom is not the absence of pressure. It's the absence of compulsion. The pressure can still be there. The disappointment, the frustration, the sense that something isn't right. What changes is the relationship. You stop treating feelings like orders and start treating them like weather. They pass through. They don't get to decide where you go. This is where the idea becomes practical. A man sits in his truck after a long shift, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, phone lighting up with messages he doesn't want to read yet. He feels the familiar pull. Defend yourself. Explain. Make sure they understand. The urge feels urgent, convincing. If freedom were a feeling, he'd wait until the urge went away. But it doesn't. Instead, freedom shows up as something quieter. He notices the urge, names it without feeding it. I want to react. That's it. No judgment, no story, just awareness. The moment he doesn't obey it, even though it's still there, something important happens. Not outside, inside. He proves to himself that discomfort does not equal danger. This is the Stoic core, and it's easy to miss because it doesn't look dramatic. Freedom isn't winning the argument. It's realizing you don't need to win. Freedom isn't staying calm at all times. It's staying directed when calm isn't available. That's why so many strong people still feel trapped. They confuse control with comfort. They believe that if something still hurts, they must be failing. Stoicism says the opposite. Pain can exist without owning you. Anger can show up without being given the wheel. A feeling can be loud without being obeyed. This is not passive, it's disciplined. It requires attention, patience, and the willingness to let a moment pass without demanding it change first. That's hard for people raised to act fast, to respond, to fix. But that's also why it works. Because the world will always find ways to press. Deadlines, bills, people who don't see you the way you see yourself. If freedom depended on those things behaving, it would never last. Stoicism places it somewhere safer, inside the one place no one else can reach. The space where you decide whether a feeling becomes a command or just another visitor. This doesn't make life easier. It makes it steadier. And steadiness is what carries you through years, not moods. Once you understand this, you stop waiting to feel free before you act with integrity. You act with integrity, and freedom follows quietly behind. Not as relief, not as excitement, but as the confidence that no matter what shows up next, you won't be dragged off course. That steadiness depends on something almost invisible, so small most people pass it by without noticing. A gap, not a pause that feels calm, not a breath that erases the pressure, just a thin space between what happens and what you do next. It's there when the email lands in your inbox with a tone that feels off, when the tone of voice changes across the table, when someone says your name in a way that isn't friendly. The body reacts immediately. That part is fast, honest, untrained. The stomach tightens, the jaw sets. A sentence forms before you're aware of it. This is where most lives turn without permission. The reaction feels fused to the event like one solid piece, as if the moment itself is pushing your hand forward. But that's an illusion created by speed. The Stoics paid close attention to this speed, not because they were calm men, but because they lived in a world that punished hesitation. What they noticed was simple and unsettling. Between the event and the action, there is always a judgment. Not a long one. Not a thoughtful one. A flash. This is bad. This is dangerous. This cannot stand. That judgment slips in quietly so fast, it feels like part of the event itself. But it isn't. The event arrives from the outside. The judgment is added on the inside. That distinction is everything. Imagine a man sitting at a red light. The engine hums, the radio murmurs, the car behind him lays on the horn. Long, aggressive. The body reacts first, a surge, a heat. Then the judgment appears. That was disrespectful. If that judgment is accepted without question, the reaction follows automatically. The middle finger, the shout, the acceleration when the light turns green. But if the judgment is noticed, even for half a second, the chain breaks. Not because the feeling disappears, it doesn't, but because the feeling is no longer alone. This is the smallest gap that changes everything. Stoicism doesn't teach you to stop impressions from arriving. That's impossible. It teaches you to slow down the agreement. You don't argue with the feeling. You don't suppress it. You don't dress it up with positivity. You simply don't sign the contract immediately. This feels urgent is not the same as this requires action. Most people never learn the difference. They live as if every inner surge carries authority, as if discomfort is a command that must be obeyed. That's why they feel exhausted, pulled in 100 directions, always reacting. The Stoic move is quieter. You notice the judgment forming. You hold it up just long enough to see it clearly. Is this actually harmful? Is this within my control? Is this worth my character? Not in a debate, in a glance. That glance is the gap. It doesn't look impressive from the outside. No one applauds it. No one even knows it happened. But inside, something fundamental shifts. You stop being pushed. This isn't hesitation born of fear. It's restraint born of clarity. A man who understands this gap is no longer at the mercy of his first reaction. He may still feel anger. He may still feel the urge to defend, to correct, to strike back. But he is no longer fused to it. That separation is freedom in its earliest form. Not the freedom to feel good, the freedom to choose direction while the feeling is still present. That's why the gap matters more than any outcome. You can lose the argument and keep your character. You can sit with discomfort without letting it decide your next move. You can be pressed without being owned. This takes practice and humility. At first, the gap is barely noticeable. A flicker, a breath that arrives too late. But with attention, it widens, not into comfort, into space. Enough space to decide who you are going to be before the moment decides for you. That space, small as it is where a steady life is built. That space you've learned to notice the gap that gives you room to choose needs a boundary to stand on. Without it, the gap collapses under pressure. The old line the Stoics drew was simple, almost too simple to respect. Some things belong to you, some things don't. It doesn't sound like much, but this line has saved men for centuries. Picture a man standing in his garage late at night, the door half open, cold air drifting in. A toolbox sits open on the floor. The car still won't start. He's tired. His hands are dirty. Tomorrow is coming whether he's ready or not. He can control the work he puts in, the care he takes, the patience he brings to the task. He cannot control whether the engine cooperates tonight. That difference matters more than most people realize. When men suffer, it's rarely because something went wrong. It's because they tried to carry what was never theirs to hold. They take responsibility for outcomes that depend on chance. They blame themselves for other people's moods. They lose sleep over things that don't answer to effort. The Stoics called this confusion a mistake of ownership. They weren't saying don't care. They were saying care about the right things. Your choices belong to you. Your values belong to you. The way you respond when pressure shows up belongs to you. What does not belong to you are results, reactions, and recognition. This is where many people push back. They hear this and think it sounds like giving up, like lowering standards, like letting life off the hook. It isn't. It's precision. Imagine a man at work who does his job well. He shows up on time. He follows through. He treats people fairly. At the end of the quarter, someone else gets the promotion. If his sense of worth is tied to the outcome, he loses twice. Once, when the decision is made, and again, when he carries the bitterness home. But if his focus stays on what belongs to him, his character remains intact. He can still speak up, still advocate for himself, still decide his next move. What he doesn't do is confuse injustice with personal failure. That distinction keeps him steady. This line also changes how men deal with anger. Anger often feels justified because it's aimed outward, at traffic, at management, at the economy. But once you draw the line, you notice how much of that anger is spent trying to control what doesn't answer to you. The weather doesn't respond to shouting. Neither do other people's choices. Energy spent there disappears. When you redirect that energy inward toward discipline and clarity, it finally does some work. The Stoics didn't pretend this was easy. They knew how tempting it is to cross the line and grab at outcomes. That's why they repeated this rule constantly. In different words, in different settings, not as philosophy, as training. Every day brings fresh confusion. Every day offers new opportunities to pick up weight that isn't yours. A comment that stings. A delay you didn't plan for. A mistake someone else made that you now have to deal with. Each time, the question is the same. What here belongs to me? Not in theory. In this exact moment, your tone belongs to you. Your next step belongs to you. Your willingness to act with integrity belongs to you. The outcome does not. Once this becomes clear, the gap you learned to see earlier has something solid to rest on. You're no longer pausing in confusion. You're pausing with direction. That's why this old line still works. It doesn't promise success. It promises alignment. And alignment is what allows a man to move through uncertainty without losing himself. When the pressure comes, and it will, this line keeps you from scattering your attention. You stop trying to manage the whole world and return to the only place where effort actually matters. Your conduct, your judgment, your character. That focus doesn't make life smaller. It makes it workable. And for men carrying responsibility, that difference is everything. That focus makes life workable. But there's a sentence that quietly sabotages it. It shows up when effort doesn't pay off, when plans fall apart, when something breaks that you took care of. This shouldn't be happening. It sounds harmless, almost reasonable. You hear it standing in a grocery line that isn't moving, sitting in traffic after leaving early, opening an email that changes the week you thought you had. The words don't shout, they sink in, and once they do, the weight doubles. The situation is already uncomfortable. Now, it's also wrong, unacceptable, unfair. A man wakes before sunrise, coffee cooling on the counter, work boots by the door. He did what he was supposed to do, showed up, put in the hours, stayed out of trouble. Then the call comes, budget cuts, schedule change, nothing personal. He listens without interrupting. thanks them for letting him know. Afterward, alone in the kitchen, the sentence forms on its own. This shouldn't be happening. And just like that, the mind goes to work. It starts comparing, keeping score, pulling up evidence. I did everything right. They don't see the whole picture. This isn't how it's supposed to go. That's where the real suffering begins. Not with the loss itself, but with the argument against reality. Stoicism is blunt about this. Not to be cold, but to be clear. Reality doesn't make promises. It doesn't owe explanations. It doesn't adjust itself to match our expectations. When we say, this shouldn't be happening, we're not describing the world. We're demanding it be different, and demands create tension that never resolves, because the world doesn't negotiate. This belief often hides behind good intentions, a sense of fairness, a belief in effort and reward. Those ideas have value. They guide behavior. But when they turn into expectations about outcomes, they quietly turn against us. A man believes that being decent should protect him from hardship. So when hardship arrives, it feels like a betrayal, not just inconvenient, personal. Stoicism asks for a different stance. Not resignation, not bitterness. Acceptance of how things are without surrendering how you respond. There's a difference. You can acknowledge that something is painful without insisting it violates the rules of existence. Pain doesn't mean something went wrong. It means something happened. That shift sounds subtle, but it changes everything. When you drop the should, the moment loses its second edge. The first edge still hurts. Loss is loss. Disappointment is disappointment. But the extra layer, the resentment, the replay, the quiet rage at the universe starts to dissolve. This is where Stoicism goes deeper than most advice. It doesn't promise you fewer setbacks. It promises fewer illusions. The illusion that life is a contract, that if you follow the rules, the outcomes will line up. When that illusion breaks, many people break with it. They grow cynical or numb or perpetually angry. Stoicism offers another option: to stop arguing with what has already arrived and redirect attention to what still belongs to you. Your next action, your posture toward the situation, your willingness to act without bitterness. A man who understands this still feels frustration, but he doesn't add insult to injury by insisting that reality violated an agreement it never signed. He lets go of the fantasy that things must make sense to be endured. That doesn't make him passive. It makes him clear enough to decide what to do next without dragging resentment into the decision. This clarity doesn't come from optimism. It comes from accuracy, from seeing that the sentence, "this shouldn't be happening," isn't a truth. It's a habit, and habits can be unlearned. When you notice that sentence forming, you don't need to replace it with positivity. You don't need to convince yourself everything is fine. You only need to tell the truth. This is happening. That's it. No judgment, no negotiation. Just contact with reality. From there, the next step becomes visible. Not easy, but available. And availability is all a steady life requires. When you stop demanding that life behave, you regain the energy to behave well yourself. That's the trade Stoicism offers. You give up the right to insist that the moment be different, and in return, you get your footing back. Enough to stand, enough to choose, enough to move forward without carrying the extra weight of a fight you were never going to win. Once you stop fighting reality, something else comes into focus. The pattern underneath it all. Every life, no matter how steady it looks from the outside, moves through the same cycle. Pressure appears. A moment tightens. Something challenges your sense of control. That's conflict. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It shows up as a late bill. A comment that lands wrong. A silence where reassurance used to be. Conflict is not a failure. It's the raw material. What happens next is where lives quietly separate. There is always a choice, not the dramatic kind, not the kind people applaud, a small one, often unnoticed. Do I speak now, or do I wait? Do I explain myself, or do I let the moment pass? Do I reach for control, or do I stay with what's actually mine? This is the hinge point. Most people think character is something you have, like a trait, a label, strong, calm, reliable. Stoicism sees it differently. Character is something you build, one response at a time. A man comes home after a long day. The house is loud, dinner is late. Someone says you're in a B mood before he's even taken off his shoes. That's conflict. The choice arrives quietly. He can snap back. He can withdraw. He can carry the weight of the day into the room and let it spill where it doesn't belong. Or he can pause, set the keys down, take one breath before answering. That breath doesn't solve anything. It doesn't make the day better, but it does something else. It places him on one side of the line instead of the other. That's how character is formed, not through grand decisions, through ordinary ones repeated. Stoicism is often misunderstood here. People think it's about emotional restraint. It's not. It's about directional consistency. Conflict pulls you outward, toward blame, toward reaction, toward the illusion that if you manage the moment hard enough, it will stop pressing. Choice pulls you inward, back to judgment, back to values, back to the question most people avoid. What kind of man do I want to be right now? Not in theory, in this room, with this pressure. Character is the residue of that question answered again and again. No single choice defines you, but no choice is neutral either. Each one leaves a trace. Raise your voice often enough, and anger becomes familiar. Pause often enough, and steadiness becomes available. This is why Stoicism doesn't obsess over outcomes. Outcomes are loud. They demand attention, but they don't shape you. Your responses do. A man who understands this stops asking, "How do I make this go my way?" and starts asking, "How do I meet this without losing myself?" That shift changes how conflict is experienced. It's no longer just something to endure or escape. It becomes a training ground. Each challenge is a test, not of strength, but of alignment. Are my actions consistent with what I claim to value, even when it costs me comfort, even when no one notices, especially then? This is where responsibility becomes meaningful. Not responsibility for fixing everything, not responsibility for other people's behavior, responsibility for the only thing that compounds over time: who you are becoming. A man who avoids conflict avoids growth. A man who reacts blindly is shaped by whatever hits him. But a man who stays present in the choice, even when it's uncomfortable, begins to direct his own formation. This doesn't make life smooth. It makes it honest. You stop pretending that character appears automatically. You stop waiting for the right conditions. You work with what shows up. Conflict arrives. Choice follows. Character is formed over days, over years, quietly. That's the Stoic loop, not a technique, a way of living that accepts pressure as part of the deal and uses it not to harden, but to clarify. When you see conflict this way, you no longer ask why life keeps testing you. You understand that this is how it teaches, not with speeches, with moments. And every moment gives you another chance to practice becoming the kind of person who can be trusted when things don't go his way. That understanding changes how a day begins. Most mornings don't start with wisdom. They start with noise. An alarm you didn't want to hear. A phone lighting up before your feet touch the floor. A quick scan of messages that already feel heavy. By the time coffee is poured, the mind is already racing ahead, arguing with conversations that haven't happened yet. That's how most people meet the day. Unarmed. The Stoics didn't leave mornings to chance. They knew something most people learn too late. If you wait for pressure to arrive before deciding how you'll respond, it's already too late. So they practiced something simple, not meditation in the modern sense, not positive affirmations, preparation. Picture a man standing by the sink as the house is still quiet, the sky outside barely light, the day unopened. He doesn't reach for motivation. He reaches for clarity. He reminds himself calmly of what is likely to appear. Delays, misunderstandings, people acting out of fear or ego, moments that don't go as planned, not as a complaint, as a forecast. This isn't pessimism, it's accuracy. When you expect the road to have potholes, you don't feel betrayed when you hit one. This is the first layer of armor. You tell yourself the truth before the world lies to you. Today, things may press. Someone may test my patience. Something may go wrong. And when it does, it won't be personal. That single thought removes a surprising amount of friction. The Stoics believed surprise is one of the main sources of suffering. Not the event itself, but the shock that it happened at all. So, they trained the mind to meet difficulty early on their own terms. A man sitting at the edge of his bed takes 30 seconds before standing up. He asks one quiet question: what kind of man do I intend to be today? Not a grand version of himself, not a fantasy, just the next right posture, patient, measured, willing to pause before reacting. He doesn't promise perfection, he sets direction. This is where morning armor becomes practical. You don't rehearse arguments, you rehearse restraint. You don't imagine winning, you imagine staying aligned when winning isn't available. The Stoics understood that once the day begins, emotion moves faster than reason. Morning is the only time you get to speak to yourself before everything else speaks louder. So, you decide ahead of time what you will and won't give authority to. Other people's moods don't get to decide my tone. Unexpected problems don't get to dictate my values. Discomfort doesn't get to rush my judgment. These aren't slogans, they're boundaries. Without them, the day will draw them for you. This practice doesn't take long. It doesn't require silence or special conditions. It works because it shifts the order of operations. Instead of reacting and then justifying, you prepare and then choose. Men who skip this step often feel like they're always catching up, always responding, always cleaning up after moments they didn't see coming. Men who practice it don't become invincible. They become harder to knock off course. When pressure arrives later, and it feels familiar, not because it's easy, because it was anticipated. There's a subtle confidence in that, not the loud kind, the kind that comes from knowing you didn't hand the steering wheel to chance. This is why the Stoics treated morning seriously. They knew the day would test them. Morning armor isn't about controlling the day. It's about deciding who shows up to meet it. You can't stop what comes, but you can stop being surprised by it. And when you're no longer surprised, you're no longer rushed. That calm readiness, built quietly before the day begins, often determines how the rest of it unfolds. Not because the world cooperates, but because you do. That readiness carries you through the day. But what you do with the day afterward matters just as much. Evenings have a different texture. The house is quieter. The traffic thins. The mind slows enough to replay what happened. Most people use that time to distract themselves. Screens, noise, anything to avoid the feeling that something is still unsettled. The Stoics used it differently. They treated the end of the day like a quiet checkpoint, not a courtroom, not a confession, a review. Picture a man sitting alone after everything is done. The lights are low, shoes by the door, the day finally behind him. He doesn't ask, "Did I win?" He asks something more useful. Where did I give my attention today? This is where evening review begins. Not with judgment, with observation. He thinks back to moments that mattered, not every detail, just the ones that left a mark. The meeting that tightened his chest, the comment he let slide, the tone he used when he was tired. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't attack himself. He watches. Most people avoid this because they think it will be painful. They expect regret, shame, a sense of failure. That only happens when the review becomes a trial. Stoicism insists on a different posture. You are not here to punish yourself. You're here to learn the terrain. The question isn't, why did I mess that up? It's what pulled me off course. That distinction keeps the mind open. A man remembers snapping at someone who didn't deserve it. He notices the fatigue underneath, the hunger, the accumulation of small frustrations. That's information, not an excuse, not a verdict information. Another moment stands out, a pause that worked, a reaction he didn't give into. He notes it quietly, no pride, just recognition. That mattered. This is how steadiness is built. not by pretending every day was clean, but by tracking the patterns honestly. The Stoics believed unexamined days repeat themselves. You don't change what you don't notice. Evening review brings the invisible into view. Where did pressure show up? Where did I stay aligned? Where did I trade direction for relief? These questions aren't heavy, they're practical. They prepare tomorrow without anxiety. A man who skips this step carries unfinished moments into sleep. They turn into tension, into restlessness. A man who practices it sets the day down before going to bed. He doesn't need closure from the world. He gives it to himself. This is also where forgiveness quietly enters. Not forgiveness for others, for yourself. You acknowledge the miss. You understand the cause. You release the need to replay it. The Stoics knew that self-contempt weakens discipline. Clarity strengthens it. So the review ends simply. One sentence. Tomorrow, I'll watch for that. That's it. No vows. No self-criticism. Just direction. Over time, these small reviews add up. They sharpen awareness. They shorten the distance between pressure and choice. You start noticing patterns earlier in the day. You recognize familiar traps before stepping into them. Evenings stop being a blur. They become a place of quiet calibration. This practice doesn't make you harsh. It makes you accurate. Accurate about where your energy goes. Accurate about what helps and what harms. And accuracy is what allows improvement without resentment. When you lie down at night, nothing is unresolved. The day had its weight. You carried what was yours. You set the rest down. That's what evening review offers, not perfection, not control. A clean handoff between today and tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, you don't start from zero. You start a little wiser than you were the night before. That quiet wisdom you carry into tomorrow will not announce itself. No one will notice the pause you chose instead of the argument. No one will mark the moment you didn't send the message. No one will applaud the restraint you practiced when no one was watching. Most of the work Stoicism asks for happens off stage. There's no audience for the nights you go to bed without replaying the day. No recognition for the mornings you meet pressure without sharp edges. No credit given for the anger you felt and did not release. This is where many people lose interest. They want proof. They want results that show. They want some external sign that the effort meant something. Stoicism offers none of that. It offers something quieter. A man walks away from a situation that would have earned him approval if he'd fought back. He keeps his mouth shut when the comment would have landed hard. Later, no one says thank you. No one even knows it happened. But inside, something holds. This path doesn't build status. It builds reliability. And reliability is invisible until it's needed. When things fall apart, people look for the man who doesn't panic, the one who doesn't add fuel, the one who can carry weight without making noise. Those men aren't shaped by praise. They're shaped by repetition, by choosing alignment over applause. This is the hardest part to accept, that doing the right thing often feels anticlimactic, that discipline doesn't feel heroic in the moment, that self-mastery doesn't announce itself with relief. You simply go on. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't write for admiration. They wrote for endurance. They knew that a life built on recognition becomes unstable the moment recognition disappears. So they placed the reward somewhere safer, in the knowledge that you didn't betray yourself, in the steadiness that comes from acting without needing permission, in the quiet confidence that no one else gets to hand you. This work changes how you move through the world. You stop explaining yourself so much. You stop needing to be understood in every moment. You stop measuring progress by how things look from the outside. Instead, you notice something subtler. Your reactions slow. Your decisions carry less regret. Your energy stops leaking into places that don't return it. None of that is impressive. It's effective. And effectiveness rarely looks exciting. A man who practices this doesn't feel superior. He feels grounded. He doesn't see himself as enlightened. He sees himself as responsible. Responsible for the tone he brings. Responsible for the weight he carries. Responsible for the direction of his life, even when circumstances push back. That responsibility doesn't come with applause. It comes with peace that doesn't depend on conditions, not the loud kind, the steady kind, the kind that lets you sit in silence without needing distraction, the kind that lets you hear criticism without collapsing, the kind that lets you move forward without dragging resentment behind you. This is why the work stays quiet. If it were obvious, it would attract the wrong motives. It would turn into performance, into identity, into something done to be seen. Stoicism strips that away. It asks you to act well, even when it doesn't improve your image. Especially then, because that's when character is real, when no one is watching, when nothing is gained, when the only witness is your own attention. If you keep choosing this path, don't expect a ceremony. Expect something simpler. A growing sense that fewer things can knock you off balance, that fewer moments steal your sleep, that fewer reactions end in regret. That's the return. Quiet, uncelebrated, reliable. And in a world addicted to noise and validation, that kind of strength stands on its own, whether anyone notices it or not. That quiet strength stands on its own. And it always begins the same way, with a choice. Not a dramatic one, not a life-altering declaration, a small decision made under pressure, to pause, to see clearly, to act without surrendering yourself to the moment. That is what freedom looks like when it's real. Not something you feel once and keep forever. Something you choose again and again. Most people wait for the right conditions to arrive. They tell themselves they'll be steady when life calms down. They'll be patient when the pressure eases. They'll be disciplined when things finally make sense. That day rarely comes. Life doesn't soften to reward growth. It keeps moving. It keeps pressing. So the Stoics placed freedom somewhere safer, not in circumstances, not in outcomes, in the part of you that remains available even when everything else is unstable. You've seen how it works. A moment arrives uninvited. Your body reacts. Your mind tells a story. And in that narrow space before the story becomes action, you choose. Sometimes you choose well. Sometimes you don't see it in time. Both are part of the practice. Stoicism doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for attention. When you miss the moment, you don't condemn yourself. You learn from it. When you catch it, you don't celebrate. You note it quietly and move on. This is how a life becomes steadier without becoming rigid. You stop demanding that the world cooperate before you act with integrity. You stop handing your direction to whatever happens next. Instead, you develop a simple trust that no matter what appears, you can meet it without abandoning yourself. That trust doesn't come from confidence. It comes from repetition, from choosing restraint when reaction was easier, from choosing clarity when stories were tempting, from choosing alignment when no one was watching. Over time, something subtle changes. You're not as easily pulled, not as easily rushed, not as easily convinced that every feeling requires a response. You begin to move with a kind of quiet authority, not authority over others, over yourself. That's the freedom the Stoics were pointing toward. Not freedom from hardship, freedom within it. A freedom that doesn't depend on applause, doesn't collapse under pressure, doesn't vanish when the mood changes. It's built the same way every day. In the morning, You prepare your mind. You remind yourself what belongs to you and what does not. During the day, you practice noticing the gap. You slow the agreement. You choose direction over impulse. At night, you review without cruelty. You learn. You set the day down. Then you sleep. And when morning comes again, you choose once more. This isn't a transformation you announce. It's a posture you return to. Some days it's easier. Some days it feels heavy. But it's always available. That's the quiet promise Stoicism makes. Not that life will be fair. Not that effort will always be rewarded. Only this, that your character does not have to be a casualty of circumstance. You don't need to control the world to live with dignity inside it. You only need to keep choosing what kind of person you will be when the moment presses. So, if today was difficult, let it be instruction, not indictment. If you lost the gap, notice it. That's already progress. If you held it, carry that knowledge quietly. Tomorrow will ask again. And when it does, you won't need a new philosophy. Just the same simple practice. Choose once, then again tomorrow.